Service that provides it with the overwhelming majority of its revenue and its gross margin, or its profit before its fixed costs, is in long-term decline to a number, and again, I have no particular wisdom on this, but we've looked at a lot of different forecasts, and whether first class in a decade declines to 20% of its current size, or 30%, or 15%, honestly doesn't really matter. With that sort of decline, the basic economics of the Postal Service are going to force it to collapse. The second piece of bad news is the entity that's responsible for setting up and maintaining the Postal Service, the United States Congress. While it has many good people in it who both get it and don't want it to happen, who understand the value of the Postal Service, what it means to so many people, and who understand what it does, both in terms of good employment, but really how it serves our nation. For better or for worse, the overwhelming mood of Congress today is comprised either A, of people who don't understand the problem, B, don't care about the problem, or C, understand it quite well and actually want it to occur. And in some ways, that's really the most scary of all. There is now a significant minority in the United States Congress who actually wants there not to be a Postal Service. Do they want it because they like the idea of trying to destroy a large, powerful, successful labor union? I would say that's part of it. Do they fundamentally believe that the United States government shouldn't be in the business of doing good things? That we need to try to shrink the government out of existence because the very idea of a public sector is anathema to their ideology? Whatever the reason is, there is a significant minority who literally believe we shouldn't have a post office at all, and therefore they welcome its decline, and not only do they welcome it, they're doing everything they can to accelerate it. And they are not the majority today, and through your good work, at least for the moment, we're fighting them to a draw, but they are a significant minority, and they're not given up. And third, unfortunately, you have a management team who, while they're very good at many things, at the issue of reinventing and reimagining and fighting for this institution, they have thrown in the towel. This institution needs a new path. It needs people leading it who want and believe and know that it needs to reinvent itself to survive and thrive. Unfortunately, their vision, as we said in our paper that we shared with your leadership, their vision, unfortunately, is to shrink to survive. They seem to honestly believe that by degrading the network, by reducing collective bargaining rights, by reducing convenience for customers, by reducing frequency, that the Postal Service can have a future. Now, anybody who has studied even a little bit of basic network economics or has participated in any kind of restructuring of a troubled institution knows that that is a dead-end strategy, that will only accelerate the very problem that the institution faces. But, in fact, that is the plan. The plan is to shrink to survive. So you have a set of external economics, the decline of first class. You have let's call it a board of directors of 535 men and women who, as I said, either don't get it, don't care, or want it to happen. And you have a management who's thrown in the towel. So things are looking pretty good. The future, as I said, on that trajectory is very, very bleak. What do we have to do to stop it? What does it take? Let's start with the strengths that the post office has, because while the weaknesses and the bad news is very significant, we are not without tools. We are not at a place where it is inevitable. It is, as I said, inevitable if action is not taken. Right now, the default option, right now, the forces of inertia are leading to extinction. but it doesn't have to be that way. What does the Postal Service have? First thing, let's take a real look at the crisis. I will not in any way try to varnish for you how significant the long-term crisis is. This institution is going out of business. But it is not going out of business today. It is only going out of business today because the Congress wants it. The crisis of today is not about the long-term decline. In the first 8 months of the year, the Postal Service lost $10 billion. And if you were reading a casual reader of media accounts, you probably would have thought it was twice that much. Because it's hard to pick up a newspaper without hearing $2 billion in a month. Well, in fact, the number is $10 billion over 8 months, which is plenty bad. 94% of that loss had nothing to do with delivering the mail. 94% of that loss was either the pre-funding mandate, completely a creation of Congress, which no other company in the public or private sector needs to bear, or accounting changes driven by the extremely low interest rate that causes the Postal Service to change its workers' comp expense, not having anything to do with how many people get hurt on the job or what their benefits are, when they get hurt, frequency or the lifespan or anything else like that, just having to do with interest rate changes, which will almost certainly reverse themselves in the period ahead. So only 6% of the loss had actually anything to do with delivering the mail. Now, we shouldn't sneeze at losses of that level. It is still a lot of money. The Postal Service on its current trajectory will lose almost $1 billion from delivering the mail this year. But there is a big difference between losing $1 billion a year and losing $1 billion or $2 a month, which is what the average consumer of the news, if they simply read the headlines or even the stories, would have you believe. So in fact, there is time. In fact, we face a manufactured crisis that is being used for political objectives. But it's succeeding. And the dilemma with this manufactured crisis is it is causing people to act, and act in a way that will accelerate the real crisis. So when the manufactured crisis comes, and we are told that the Postal Service is losing $20 billion a year, then the right thing to do is to do anything you can to survive, to essentially engage in amputations, because you got to try to save something. And if indeed the Postal Service were losing $20 billion from delivering the mail, that would be the right thing to do. Cut as fast and as hard as you can and just pray that it works. But that's not what it is. But that's how we're acting. And so we're degrading the network. We're setting in motion the changes that will make that $20 billion be the real loss from operations in 5 or 10 years. Because that is what it will be. It will be that way partly because of the decline of first class, and partly because indeed, if we degrade the network fast enough, we can drive the customers out of this system. So while today's crisis is manufactured, it is manufactured itself into a reality which is visiting itself on the future of the Postal Service. But it seems to me we at least have an obligation to speak the truth and to observe, in no way suggesting that the long-term crisis is not real, but to observe and to remind people that the short-term crisis is about mandates that no private or public company has, or accounting changes, not delivering the mail. Second, opportunity. This is still today an extraordinary network. It is the densest network in our country and in the world. For a population as spread out as America, this is the densest network in the world. This network hits 150 million addresses 6 days a week. Nothing else comes even remotely close. And class mail is in long-term decline, and I will not argue the other side of that for a minute. There is no reason why this network can't be filled with other things. Just as in 1912, the Postal Service was given the opportunity to deliver packages, there are many, many products that cannot be reduced to electronic form. So while Amazon does not deliver books or music by the mail particularly anymore, they want to sell you everything else that's in your house. And e-commerce provides an enormous opportunity to take this dense network, to take the extraordinary brand that the Postal Service brings, the trust and reliability that it has, the value proposition that its customers believe in, and fill that network with new products. So there is an opportunity for growth. In that same 8-month period, when the Postal Service was struggling to break even and losing money for delivering the mail in the whole, shipping services, which is sort of everything else other than first class and standard, was up by 21%. Now, I don't know if that growth trajectory can continue, but that's not bad, and it's certainly not bad when the guys in charge aren't really trying to make it happen. So almost despite itself, the Postal Service is revealing that in fact the network is still a thing of extraordinary value. But at the same time, as I said, there are those who are trying to cut it off. And third, and most importantly, the Postal Service has you. In the end, whether or not the Postal Service survives and is restructured successfully really does rest on your shoulders. And the question really is, will this union take the bull by the horns and lead the effort to reimagine, restructure, and revitalize the United States Postal Service? What does a restructuring of the Postal Service look like? What would a new Postal Service look like? I keep doing things in threes. 3 pieces to it. 1, financial. There will need to be shared sacrifice. And again, I don't want to sugarcoat this, but I would urge you, I'm your advisor, so I have obviously no authority, but I would urge you to empower your leaders to take a hard look at your collective bargaining agreements. Not because anything you have is not fair, not because anything you have wasn't hard fought, not because in any way, shape, or form you're overpaid or underworked, but because the fundamental reality is your employer's going out of business. And from both a political and economic perspective, labor needs to be a part of the solution. And that is going to take tough and difficult decisions with people who rightly say to you as their leaders, what did I do? I did everything I was asked. I delivered the mail, I got to work on time, I left work on time, I delivered the mail, I kept my nose clean, and now you're telling me that something I was given that barely got me into the middle class is not deserved. And they are right. They are right. You don't have a good answer